Have you ever wondered which Native American tribe is the poorest in the United States? You might guess it's a small, isolated group in the Arctic wilderness of Alaska. Or perhaps a forgotten band of people tucked away in the scorching deserts of Arizona. But the truth is far more unsettling. The poorest Native American tribe in the U.S. lives not in some remote frontier, but in South Dakota, the geographic heart of America. Right in the middle of the most powerful, wealthiest country on Earth, there exists a community where poverty isn't a crisis, it's a way of life. Now picture this. On one side, luxury high-rises glisten in New York, tech billionaires host galas in San Francisco, and private jets glide across Miami's sky. On the other, in a place called Pine Ridge, children warm their hands over burning trash cans, families cram 15 people into a rotting trailer, and elders survive brutal winters without electricity or running water. How did it come to this? How is it possible that, in a country that sends rockets to Mars, there's a community where life expectancy is lower than war-torn Afghanistan? This is not just a story about poverty. It's a story about broken promises, cultural survival, and a nation's refusal to look in the mirror. So let's go there, to Pine Ridge. To meet the Oglala Lakota. And to ask the hard question. What really happened to the descendants of Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and Red Cloud, and why are they suffering today? The Oglala Lakota are one of the 7 bands of the Lakota people, part of the Greater Sioux Nation, a people once known and feared across the Great Plains. They were master horsemen, brilliant strategists, and fierce protectors of their lands. Their name, Oglala, loosely translates to, they scatter their own, a reference to their warrior mobility and resistance to centralized control. In the 1800s, the Oglala roamed vast tracts of the northern plains, from what's now Nebraska to the Dakotas and beyond. They followed the buffalo, governed by councils of elders, and passed down oral histories that preserved knowledge for generations. But everything changed with the westward expansion of the United States. After decades of resistance, including the legendary victory over General Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, the U.S. government began to break the Sioux through a series of treaties, betrayals, and military campaigns. Eventually, the Oglala Lakota were forced onto reservations, confined to lands they did not choose. One such reservation was Pine Ridge, in present-day South Dakota. At first glance, Pine Ridge might seem vast, over 3,000 square miles. But its lands are rugged, dry, and largely unfit for traditional agriculture or economic development. It's far from urban centers, with few jobs, fewer industries, and even fewer resources. A tragic irony hangs over this place. From proud warriors of the plains, to some of the poorest people in America. What happened? The answer lies not in a single event, but in a system that dismantled their way of life. The 1887 Dawes Act divided tribal lands into individual allotments, breaking up communal ownership and opening, surplus, land to white settlers. The Indian boarding schools, under the slogan, "Kill the Indian, Save the Man," stripped children of language, culture, and family. The U.S. repeatedly violated treaties, especially regarding the sacred Black Hills, forcing the Lakota to fight not just for survival, but for identity. Generation by generation, the blows kept coming. And now, the cracks are everywhere. Step onto the Pine Ridge Reservation, and you'll quickly feel like you've entered another country, or another century. Many homes here aren't homes at all, but patchwork structures cobbled together from plywood, plastic tarps, and scrap metal. Entire families, 10, sometimes 15 people, squeeze into a 2-bedroom shack with no running water, no heat, and barely any insulation. Winters in South Dakota are punishing. Snow falls thick, temperatures plunge below zero. And yet, some homes here don't have furnaces. People burn wood, coal, even old furniture to survive. Some freeze. Every year. The average annual income on Pine Ridge? Around $7,000 per person. That's not a typo. Compare that to the U.S. median of over $40,000 per person, and you begin to see the depth of inequality. In some parts of the reservation, unemployment soars above 85%. Jobs are nearly non-existent. There are almost no private businesses. No malls. No factories. No movie theaters. Many residents have never even seen a real grocery store. The life expectancy for Oglala Lakota men is around 47 to 50 years. That's lower than countries in active war zones. Alcoholism is rampant. Despite alcohol being banned on the reservation, illegal bootlegging thrives. Many people self-medicate to escape pain, not just physical pain, but historical and generational trauma. Rates of diabetes, suicide, and depression are among the highest in the country. Youth suicide has reached epidemic levels. And yet, mental health services are critically underfunded. Clinics are understaffed. Emergency care is sometimes hours away. In Pine Ridge, over 60% of the children live below the poverty line. Some go days without a proper meal. Some schools can't afford working heating systems. Teachers often buy their own supplies, or leave after a single semester. One haunting image stays with many visitors. Children playing in old car tires beside rusting mobile homes, while wild dogs roam the streets. A scene that feels closer to a third-world slum than a community within the borders of the United States. And here's the thing, most Americans have no idea this exists. Because it's not on the news. It's not trending. And it's not convenient for the national narrative. But Pine Ridge is real. The suffering is real. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened by design. The poverty on Pine Ridge didn't begin with bad luck or poor decisions. It was designed. The Oglala Lakota, once fierce defenders of the Great Plains, were betrayed not just once, but repeatedly, through promises inked into treaties, only to be shattered by the very government that wrote them. One of the most infamous was the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868, which guaranteed the Lakota ownership of the Black Hills, a sacred land, central to their spiritual life and survival. But when gold was discovered there, those promises evaporated. The United States sent in miners, settlers, then soldiers. The Black Hills were taken. The land was never sold, it was seized. The Lakota never agreed. The U.S. Supreme Court even ruled in 1980 that the Black Hills were taken illegally, and offered compensation. But the Lakota refused the money. Why? Because to them, you don't sell your soul. And it didn't end there. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a new assault began. Not on land, but on identity. The federal government began forcibly removing Lakota children from their families, placing them in Indian boarding schools, sometimes thousands of miles away. Their hair was cut. Their language was forbidden. Their names were stripped. Their culture was punished. Insert archival footage, a line of children in military-style uniforms, heads shaved, expressions hollow. One U.S. Army officer famously described the goal of these schools. Kill the Indian, and save the man. They didn't just try to erase a people, they tried to rewrite what it meant to be human. These policies shattered families and fractured generations. They created cycles of trauma, cycles that persist to this day. Addiction. Depression. Silence. Shame. These weren't accidents. They were the intended effects of policies meant to assimilate a people into a world that didn't want them. So when you ask, why is Pine Ridge poor, the answer starts here. Centuries of broken treaties, stolen land, and cultural erasure. Today, when people hear that unemployment on Pine Ridge reaches 90% in some districts, or that the average income is around $7,000 a year, the instinct is to wonder, why don't they just leave? Why don't they get jobs? But Pine Ridge isn't a matter of choice, it's a web of barriers, woven over generations. First, education. Schools on the reservation are chronically underfunded. Some operate without proper heating, working plumbing, or even enough textbooks. Teachers are often underpaid and overburdened. Many leave after just one school year. And with few opportunities for higher education nearby, a young person has to move hundreds of miles away to attend college, leaving behind their community, their language, their roots. Then there's infrastructure. There are parts of Pine Ridge where roads turn to mud after a single storm. Where internet access is nearly non-existent. Where stores are hours away, and buses don't run. There's no industry here. No factories, no major employers, no tourist resorts. Just land. And silence. Even federal aid, intended to support the tribe, often fails to make real change. Funding is fragmented, inconsistent, and tied up in layers of bureaucracy. And while there are programs, many are short-term, pilot projects that disappear with the next election cycle. You can't build a future on a 6-month grant. And looming behind all this is something harder to measure: identity. Many young Lakota today grow up caught between two worlds. The modern world tells them to succeed, they must leave their traditions behind. But their elders remind them, if you lose your language, your culture, your songs, what do you become? You can teach a child to dream. But if there's no school, no electricity, no road out, where can that dream go? This is not just poverty. It's entrapment. Generational, institutional, and deeply human. But even here, amid crumbling homes and generational trauma, hope persists. Across Pine Ridge, quiet revolutions are happening. Not in the halls of Washington, but in basements, kitchens, and dusty lots where grandmothers and teenagers are building a different future. Take, for example, the Lakota Language Consortium, a grassroots effort to bring back the tongue that schools once tried to bury. In classrooms and community centers, you can now hear young voices speaking Lakota again, reclaiming a stolen past. Or look at the youth centers popping up across the reservation. Places where children can go after school not just to be safe, but to be seen. Here, they find mentors. They find community. They learn photography, coding, tribal history, skills that build confidence and pride. And then there's women like Leona White Elk, who started a community house building initiative. With no formal training, she rallied volunteers to rebuild abandoned homes into warm, livable spaces for elders and single mothers. Her motto? No one should freeze in their own homeland. Footage fades in, Leona hammering wood in the snow, children painting walls inside a home with donated supplies. These aren't billion-dollar solutions. They're human solutions. They're not waiting for the cavalry. They are the cavalry. Even among the youth, a new wave is rising: poets, activists, teachers, using social media to amplify their voices and challenge stereotypes. "We are not museum relics," one teenager wrote. "We are the pulse of the plains." For every story of despair on Pine Ridge, there is a heartbeat of defiance. A refusal to give up. Because survival here is not just resistance, it is rebellion with roots. Pine Ridge is often called the poorest place in America. But if you look closely, you'll see, it's not just poor in dollars. It's poor in justice. Poor in memory. Poor in promises kept. Yet, within that same soil, you'll find something far richer: heritage, honor, and an enduring will to live. So the question is no longer, why are they poor? The question is, what does it say about us, that we've allowed it to stay this way? History isn't over. It breathes in the cracks of these broken homes. It sings in the wind that still carries Lakota prayers across the plains. It stares back at us from Pine Ridge, not as a ghost, but as a mirror. What happens to a nation that forgets the people it tried to erase? What happens when the land remembers, but the country does not? And finally, what happens when you, yes, you, decide not to look away? If this story moved you, share it. Ask questions. Explore more of our series. Because the story of the Oglala Lakota isn't just Native American history. It's American history. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us remember, something can still change.